Thank you guys so much. Final speech, thank you for sticking around. I really appreciate it. I'm going to try to make it fun. Like we mentioned earlier, so this is going to be on the case for building something out of nothing, the case bootstrapping as it's called. And for those of you that haven't heard the term bootstrapping before, it's just a fancy word. It really means creating a company the traditional way. And the traditional way is that you have an idea for a product or a service, you build it, you offer it, hopefully you're able to sell it, and the money that comes into the company, that's what you're basically reinvesting. The alternative to bootstrapping would obviously be that you build a little bit, you show some traction, and then you try to look for external investors, but that's not going to be what we talk about today. Now, why am I speaking on this matter? Well, I was a part of FLS 2021, and it was a different kind of time. It's not just the face masks, but also raising capital was significantly easier in 2021. And that's due to the global economy in general. So that's a part of it. But the other thing is that there was a question after the keynote that Miralem had in 2021. And it was a young girl that raised her hand and she said, Miralem, how are we supposed to build companies in Bosnia and Herzegovina when we don't have financing, we don't have capital investment? And I remember Miralem's answer to this, but I also remember thinking, I have so much to say on this, I could have a keynote about it, right? And here we are 2 years later, here's the keynote. And the reason that I feel that I want to speak on this is because I've lived a bootstrap life. And I feel like whenever I present something, I want to speak something that I've lived myself, and I'm going to tell it through my story. And I believe that a lot of the perspective that I've gained over the years is something that can be valuable for you guys. So I'll start by telling my life story, and then we'll get into the insights that I've had through the years and see how that could be applicable for you guys as you venture into your journeys. So my background, you know how it is in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We divide everything between prije and poslije rata. I have to give credit to my dad that already in the 80s, he saw the potential of computers. And he wasn't a computer guy himself, not a programmer in any way. He was an economist. But he had a friend of his who was a computer guy, and he created a very simple software for my dad, which allowed him to do accounting basically on a computer. And my dad saw the power of that. He realized that whatever this thing, computers is, this is the future. So he bought a computer in the 80s so that he could learn from it, but also so that my brother and I could grow up having a computer. Fast forward to '93, we moved to Sweden as a family, and when we come to Sweden, it's a tough economic situation in Sweden in general, and they tell my dad that there's a very small chance that he can get a job as an economist, but maybe he should look into IT because it's up and coming and there will be new opportunities there. So they tell him to take some courses in IT. So in the mid-90s, my dad would come home with different books. So he had books on like C programming, C++, and one of the books he brought home was HTML. And I started looking into it together with him, and I was fascinated by HTML for two reasons. Number one, it gave me, I felt 100% creativity to build whatever I wanted to build. And again, mid-90s, not so much you can do with computers. And the other idea which blew my mind in the 90s was that you could create something on your computer and put it up on something called a server, and then my friends at their house could see what I had built. I was sold on that idea. So in 2002, a few years after that, I created my first websites that I actually put online. And because I was obsessed with basketball, everything was about basketball. So the first website was for our basketball league and our standings and the players in it and so on. And the second one was a bit more of a fun story. I got the idea that I wanted to create a website about the top 100 dunks of all time in video format. Again, long before YouTube. And I found all of these single videos on different forums where I would hang out, and then I did all the video editing. And over a period of 10 weeks, I needed to present them. So the idea was to present the results 100 to 91 one week, then 90 to 81, and so on over a 10-week period. But I didn't have the servers for this because it was very costly, especially with video back then. But I found one guy online in Canada who was very kind, who realized I was a kid, I wanted to create a website. So he said, you can use my servers. So that was awesome. Now I had the servers to host it, but I didn't have a domain yet. I went to a forum and asked if anybody could help me. And there was this one guy that said, I can create a subdomain for you on my domain. And I figured, awesome, that's solved. And I said, what's your domain? And I swear to God, I'm not kidding now. My domain was www.top100.whatsupbitches.com. Yeah. I won't lie, when I was 13, I thought that was the shit. Like, I went to school with the swagger the next day. I was like, yeah, it's top 100 sub bitches. So I created the website, and it became a huge hit. So I remember I started presenting these results. So by the time I got to the results, 50 to 41, which was week 6, there had built such a big community around this that so many people came to the website. 1,600 people came on the same day and started downloading the video that it crashed the servers. And the guy from Canada, he said, like, this is not going to work out. I thought this was going to be a smaller project, so we kind of shut it down back then. But this was my first experience, and I remember thinking even back then, like, if I make a living doing this, it would be a fun thing to do. Fast forward 2007, I studied software engineering at the University of Chalmers in Gothenburg. And quite honestly, I did the minimal thing I had to do at college to just get by. I had like the minimal grades all throughout. Not because I didn't care, but I felt like when I started studying there, they were preparing us for the Swedish industry. And Gothenburg is the birth city of Volvo, so they were basically, preparing us for Volvo. For me, being one of 30,000 people in a company, it just wasn't lucrative. And the reason that it wasn't lucrative is because the thing that I enjoyed the most was the creative freedom. And if I felt, at least back then when I was a kid, that being a small cog in this huge system, it wouldn't do it for me. So I made a plan. I set a goal as a student that by the time I finish college, I don't have to get employed anywhere. So this is very weird. Usually people go to college to be able to get employed. For me, college was a backup. So every other hour that I didn't have to spend on finishing my courses, I would spend building a company. And it was a very simple company. I wanted to create simple websites and services that would create a passive income for me. And my first goal was to, basically earn enough to pay my lunch at college. And the final goal was what we talked about here, to not have to get employed. And obviously, I didn't have the skills to build this yet, so I figured I just have to learn it, right? So I had to learn PHP, which is like programming for dynamic websites, especially popular back then. And I don't have money for marketing, so I have to get really good at SEO. And SEO is just the art of ranking high in Google, search engine optimization. So what do you do with your websites to be able to rank organically without paying, right? So I kind of went on a journey in college and created a bunch of different websites. The first one at the top there was called dindiagnos.se. If you translate that directly, it's like yourdiagnosis.com. And Dr. Senad created an application. When you enter your symptoms, it goes through my algorithm and it gives you your diagnosis. I thought that was a great idea when I was 19, but I should have had the medical expertise. So it was horrible at some point. I remember I tried using it myself and I entered like, my stomach is hurting. And it was like, you have AIDS. And I was like, oh shit, we gotta bring this down. This is not gonna work out. But it was a fun one. It was a fun one. After that, another 2.5 years of failures. And at some point I felt like, okay, I gotta start making some money. So I started doing some consulting for this website, synonyma.se. There were 2 guys who had a website which was ultra popular and still is ultra popular in Sweden today. It's a super simple website. You enter a word, you get the synonyms for it, but hundreds of thousands of visitors every day, right? So because I had learned these skills earlier, I could do the consulting for them. But the entrepreneur in me couldn't just sell consulting hours, so I started thinking about, can I have a passive revenue stream somehow working with them? And then I started looking at what are their competitors doing that they're not. And I could see that a lot of their competitors had the English dictionary as well. They just had the Swedish. So I started Googling online to see if I could find an English database. And I was able to find it. And then I went to them and said, okay, I'll implement the English language on your website for free, but I want to do revenue share on the English searches. And they said, okay, it's a win-win for everybody, so I implemented that. So that was kind of my first passive income. It still wasn't enough because it was still primarily Swedish searches that were done, right? But inspired by what they did and something that was so simple, I started thinking about, can I do something similar for myself? And I didn't have this lexicon that they were paying licenses for, like 30,000 euros every year. I couldn't afford that. But I figured I can create a website where you enter a word and then you get example sentences for how to use those words in a sentence, right? Super simple website. Obviously, I didn't write millions and millions of sentences into a database. I created a script that read thousands and thousands of books, pulled out all the sentences into a database, structured it very simply, and then I would just query my database and say, okay, for this specific word, give me all the sentences that contain it. So when I launched Foboco.com, it's a long story why it's called like that, but when I launched it, it was a major hit. So I had its peak over 100,000 visitors every day. Since I created it, over 100 million visits to this website. And I had another one after that as well. But basically, by that time, I had gotten to my goal, which was to not have to get employed after college. So, what are some of the takeaways from this story in college? Number one, it's okay to aim small early on. So not everything you do has to become a multi-million-dollar venture, right? Especially for me, I grew up with a very, how can I say, Bosnian Balkan upbringing. My parents' idea of what I needed to do in life was get a good education and then get a stable job, and that's that. So just coming from that household, we didn't talk a lot about entrepreneurship. So in the back of my mind, I didn't really believe that I could do it. I just wanted it so bad that I kept going and going. But when I got that first small win in life, and when I'm saying small, it's like when I went from $0 to $200 a month in passive income, everything changed for me, in my mind at least. So after that, I believed I could do anything. And I think it's important if you can get some of those smaller wins early on in life. Number 2, don't confuse small with easy. It was anything but easy. So I brushed over the first like 4 or 5 websites that I failed with. It was very hard, and it started taking a toll on me mentally. I started developing anxiety, panic attacks, and so on. And the reason is because I connected my self-worth with the success of these projects that I was having. Don't do that. Make sure to be resilient, work super hard, put in the extra hours, but really view it as learning points, right? Number 3, the increase in quality of life from $0 to $5,000 a month in passive income is tremendous, and this is approximately what I was making. It was tremendous in Sweden as well. Here in Sarajevo, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, you know, this is so much money. It's like Bakir Izetbegovic, and then it's you. Like you don't need more money than this. And why do I say this? When you work with investors, it's not going to be enough for them, right? Because an investor, the way that they work, they're going to invest into your company and 40 other companies as well, of which 35 will fail. And the ones that succeed, they can't succeed on this level. They need to be multi-million-dollar companies for them to be able to make back their money. So they're going to force you into doing something perhaps that you don't need for the quality of your life. Number 4, effectuation. So if you listen to this and think I want to do something similar in life, I think you have to be pragmatic. If you know that you don't have access to capital early on, don't create a goal of the first thing that you want to do is create rocket ships. It's going to be too expensive, right? Think about what it is that I know, and then who do I know, and what can we create together? And here you have to be very critical of yourself. People generally want to do business with other people that are approximately on the same level as they are, right? So if you reach out to people and, yeah, let's do this together, and people are saying no, maybe you lack some skills yourself. And then you have to go back to the drawing board and figure out, okay, what can I do that's going to be complementing to the skill set of this person that I want to work with is. Number 5, no capital teaches you how to be scrappy. I really believe in this. I believe that creativity is a muscle, and that muscle has to work the hardest when you don't have any capital. You can blow through capital really fast, and I've seen some of my friends that have received 100, 200, 300,000 euros in investments that haven't gone through this journey. They don't know how to be frugal with money, and they blow through that money like this and still at the same starting point. But I believe if you start with nothing, then when you get a lot, oh man, then it's like on steroids, right? And also the benefit of this is that it requires you to develop a lot of smaller skills, right? So because you can't afford to pay a marketing guy, now you have to learn maybe about Google AdWords or Facebook AdWords. You can't afford a video guy, you have to learn about video editing, right? So it forces you to learn a little bit about a lot of things, and trust me, later on in life that comes so in handy. If nothing else, when you're recruiting, you at least know what's good and what's not. Last story, and then we'll get to the Q&A. This is a story about Avenue, one of the products that we've built. And this is Isak, my childhood friend. And I basically, he's the one that taught me how to speak Swedish, so he took his time with me. Friends all throughout our life. We studied at the same college. He eventually got his PhD, but not in software engineering. He's in civil engineering, but we stayed friends throughout all those years. And in that process of Abderisa getting his PhD, he showed me a picture of Einstein like this. He said, this is what it still looks like. We still print all of our articles that we read, and then we do note keeping by hand. And he felt like that the reason that that was like that is because there was no adequately good enough software solution. So he asked me, do you want to build this together? And quite honestly, I didn't care what we were going to build. I just trusted so much in Abderisa, such a competent guy, and whatever he would have said, I would have gone into business with him. I just wanted to be in business with him. And that's the moral of the story. People really do invest in people and not in ideas. And we started building this and got pretty good traction early on. Abderisa went to Reddit and talked to other PhDs what they felt about what we had built. We gained a ton of users. We came up to over 10,000 users. But we had this lurking problem that we had a freemium model that you could use it for free up to a certain point, and then you would go up to premium. everybody stayed at the free level. We couldn't get them to convert into paying users. So we just kept iterating and iterating, and in that process, we joined a competition in Sweden, Venture Cup it's called. It's a pitching competition, the biggest one in Sweden. We ended up winning that competition, and then after that, a ton of VC companies came to us, and angel investors said that they wanted to invest into our company. And I told Adrisa, like, it's very flattering, but the reality is that we still don't know how we're going to convert non-paying users into paying. It would be irresponsible of us to take money right now and not know what to do with it. So we said, okay, we'll come back to the money later on, but we figured this thing out. You know, it'll be on the table. So we continued for probably another year, could have get to that point, and now we're getting more desperate. Now we actually need that money. It's not just like we're playing around. So Abderisa goes back for that money. Now it's a very different time. The economy had turned downward. We can't pick up that money. And when it was a tough situation, this summer, I went and visited Abderisa and I said, look, we've been running this for almost 3 years now. Maybe this just won't work out. Let's take it behind the barn and shoot it. I don't want you to waste your life because you feel that I've invested a lot myself. If it doesn't work out, it's just the nature of business. Not all things work out. And Abdelisak says, he says, look, give me until New Year's. If it's not working out until New Year's, that's this New Year's, we'll just shut it down. And this is what he does. He comes, we have Friday meetings every time with David Note. He comes 2 months later, and he said, yeah, I did one thing I got to tell you guys. So he's a civil engineer. He's not a software engineer. I bought this script of code, like some AI thing, and I adapted all of it to be like AI specifically for research. I bought a domain called kahubi.com. I hosted it there. I put up the servers. My mind is blown. Like, he did all of this. He's not even a software engineer. And he said, yeah, then I booked a meeting with a university in Australia, and I held a webinar for 50 people, and 6 of them bought. And I was like, shit, like, it's impressive of that. He's like, and when I talk about this is what we talked about earlier, resilience, scrappiness. And I told him, like, why didn't you just tell us, Abderisa, like, we would have done this for you, we could develop this. And he said, I was worried that you're going to say no, that it's a bad idea, so I just did it myself. And while we had that initial meeting, he didn't make too much of it, but in my mind, I was just calculating, like, on 50 people that you presented this for, 6 people, wow, that's a tremendous conversion rate. So while they were talking about something else, I was just had a pen and paper, started calculating, and I said, Abderisa, AI in research, right? And we scrape 50,000 emails every day, send 50,000 emails every day. Abderisa has a webinar for 1,000 people every day. And I remember I told him, Abderisa, I need you to have 1,000 webinars in the next year. And he was like, yeah. And that's the kind of cycles you need in life in a good way. And when that happened, this is what our income curve started looking like. So it puts a hockey stick to shame. But if you look at the dots, every dot there is 1 month of work where we were trying to figure out what's going to happen, I don't know, maybe. Thank you. So some takeaways. First of all, if there is money on the table and you're not making money, take that money. I would still just say do that. Number 2, in some ways the world is very fair. So if your software creates enough value, people are going to be willing to pay for it. And number 3, which is the biggest point that I want to make, that it's in the moments where you don't want to give away equity in your company that everybody wants to buy from a part of your business, right? And that doesn't matter. I mean, we're here in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We developed this. And if we rewind to the initial statement, how are we supposed to get investments from Bosnia and Herzegovina? It doesn't matter if you're in Bosnia and Herzegovina if you can show a curve like that. It really doesn't. We can get investments easily now from the United States, Iceland, Sweden, whatever, right? So you can get it globally, recession or no recession. But the question is, have we really made ourselves investable in the moment that we're looking for investments? So it's easy to say, oh, why does nobody want to invest in me? Trust me, when it's obvious, everybody will want to invest in you, no matter if you're Bosnia and Herzegovina or anywhere else in the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you for this awesome keynote. Like, just wow. It's always amazing to hear your stories. Senad finished earlier, so we will have a lot of time for your questions. Around 25 minutes, I think. Yes. So, feel free. Yep.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. First of all, thank you for the talk and presentation. It's really good. And congratulations on everything that you've done so far and everything that you will do in the future. I wanted to ask about something about Sweden, because now our country and Sweden have some kind of connection, both in people and economic. I wanted to ask you, what do you think, in your opinion, what's their X factor so that makes Sweden a successful country, prosperous country, and so on, that we can learn from and that we can adapt from and to use?
Sure, thank you. Great question. And it's a very broad question because it involves, of course, macroeconomics and a lot of values as well. But I have to say that for me and my family that came to Sweden as refugees, I don't know that there's a better country in the world to start your life off with when those are your preconditions, right? I think when you come to an America, which is a much more capitalist country than Sweden is like on the borderline of between capitalism and socialism. Me and my brother, we were able to get a really good education for free in Sweden, and it, I think, ultimately allowed for a lot of the things in my life. And that's one of the reasons that I really do believe in like solid taxes, not over the top, not ridiculous taxes, but I do really believe in a tax system. And if we talk about Bosnia and Herzegovina, like everybody here is avoiding taxes to the ultimate, right? And there are, of course, some reasons for that as well, right? Because maybe the thought process here is that if I pay my taxes, it'll just go into more corruption and go into the wrong hands. But I think we have to start from our own starting position and clean up in front of our own doors and make sure that we do pay our taxes the way that we should, because that's kind of the building blocks for the country to build up on. And they do that because they believe in their country a lot. And we are here quite opposite. They're proud of Volvo. We are like everything that's ours, we tend to like downplay it, and sometimes we hate on our own things, right? So I just think being proud of who we are, and then also make sure that we invest collectively, because that's really what taxes are. I think that's the primary difference in the mind shift between Sweden and Bosnia and Herzegovina. So we need to look out for ourselves as a community.
Thank you for your presentation. I would like to know, what would Avidnode look like if you had initially taken that offer along with the investors?
Great point. Only history would have told, right? I don't know what the outcome would have been. So it's very hard. There's a lot of what ifs. Maybe we would have figured it out. Maybe we wouldn't have figured it out. But it's the same thing every time. It's the same thing. What would have Avidnode looked like if we would have quit after 2 months, 2 years and 11 months? It would have been like, oh, we tried everything. There was nothing more to try. But at the same time, you can't be delusional. Sometimes if you're trying something for 3 years and it's not working, sometimes it's the right thing to quit. And all of those things every single time are like so many factors that there's no general rule for how to approach it. Just so I feel like what has been good in that moment, that element of desperation, right? Abdrisak knew he had invested almost 3 years of his life, and he had until New Year's to figure this thing out. And they say desperation breeds entrepreneurship. See how creative he got when we were about to shut it down. So who knows? I can't say, but probably if I got to do it again, I would have taken the money, quite honestly. But now I'm happy that I didn't, because now we get to keep all of our equity. And now we're quite obnoxious with it. Now we're like, yeah, we don't need the money from investors. But it's because we get to be in that point right now. But, I'm kidding that we're obnoxious. We're respectful.
So I have a few questions. First, I'm going to thank you for your amazing and inspiring presentation. It was really good. And now let's move to the questions. So my first question would be, what did you do in order to avoid burnouts in such a business? And how your friends reacted to that? How many friends you had? And were they inspiring, or were they saying like, come on, that's stupid story or something like that? And the second question would be, which books do you recommend us to read, except the Launchpad and the blue one? I can't remember the name.
Lean Startup, yeah.
Yeah, Lean Startup, yeah, that's it.
As far as books, I would say Peter Thiel's, for example, 0 to 1 is a really good book. Drive is another really good book. There are a lot of like bestsellers that literally, if you Google top 10 like entrepreneurship books, you'll get most of those, and I've read most of those as well, but those are two that come to mind. But as far as avoiding a burnout, well, I haven't been lucky to avoid a burnout. I had a burnout, and to some extent, I feel like most of the entrepreneurs that I've been around, sometimes when I think about like, if you haven't had a burnout, have you tried hard enough? I mean, it's a dark thing to say, but like, I really think like that because now I know where my border goes, like where I can't cross it, and I can feel it because of experience. And early on, my problem was shameful of these burnouts. I didn't want to tell anybody. I thought that it implied that I was weak. And that's why I talk about on one of those slides that don't count on it to be easy, but also it's more the emotional burden. It's not even the workload. It's just like, you know, one failure after the next failure. You're like, how many can you take, right? And I think being able to detach yourself from the results, that's the most important thing. But believe in the process, be analytical. Every time you fail, try to think about what could have we done different. Every new time you go into a new thing, believe again, but be okay with failing also. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm also joining all the credits for the presentation, but the question is actually about your graphical representation about the investment in this project that you did with your friend, and we actually saw that there was like a line which is actually just a plate line which is then increasing at a time that you actually started working on a project more seriously when the investment actually happened. But the question is, how do you suggest to utilize AI or machine learning as your friend actually did? Because we see that the idea is actually starting from the moment that he realized that he can use the AI to complete a project or start using it in a better way.
Sure. And I talked about it a little bit on the panel that I was yesterday. And he could only see the opportunity because he was following very closely what was happening in the AI space. And that's kind of the beauty right now, that you could start today, and a lot of your competitors that have worked on their software for years and years and years, you can kind of like in a few months leapfrog their technology because they've invested so much into that they're so much slower to make a decision to change whatever they're already having and move to something new. While you today, starting with the capabilities of AI, and we're very broad. This is not the only in-house product we have. We have 4 different products, and in all of the products, we're actively thinking about how to use AI. But I'm like every day reading up on what's happening, and it's to the point that it's frustrating because every day what was new yesterday isn't available. Some of the things that we think about implementing in our company with AI, we think like, okay, this is the limitations of what you can do with OpenAI, so if we use it together with this and this and this, we can create a great thing. And then overnight, they come out and they say, we've already created that. And you're like, all right, we have to rethink again. But it's just the nature of following what's on the cutting edge, but you'll still have an advantage if you have the energy to keep following up. And I promise you, a lot of our older peers, I can see even in our company, like they're a bit resistant that they say, I think it's cool, but you guys are young, and this is a great opportunity for you to kind of leapfrog them. So take the advantage.
Hello, Senad. I'm here on your right, I think. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. As the co-founder of a bootstrap company, unfortunately not in Bosnia, I share the sentiment, and the other sentiment I shared is the emotional roller coaster of never knowing if this is going to succeed or not, and having the ups and downs. And I think the point of correlating the results not to your own achievements is very important, and I see it as the only bad decision I can make is the one that I don't learn from. But my question for you would be, how can we create an ecosystem, the one that Sweden has, Finland has, maybe even bridge these countries and foster a more product culture, startup culture, and help the youth generate the startups, find a good product market fit, and from this bootstrapped perspective.
Thank you. I've thought about that as well, and I think actively about it because it is actually a part of the bigger mission that we even have at Zendev. But first, I think the things that we need to do is to have really big success stories ourselves, because that inspires people, and when people can point to somebody really close to them that's had a major success, it changes everything. Like, for example, around the time I was at college, Spotify, the founders were at that same college, and you watch them do what they did. Now all of a sudden you believe in a different way yourself. PewDiePie, the YouTuber, he was in our college. He quit wow, look at what he did. So when you see a few of those people and what they have done, you really start believing. And that's why my focus right now is to make AvidNote ultimately the biggest storyline that we can make out of it. Not for the purpose, quite honestly, that I need more money. I don't need more than I have right now, but to be kind of like break through that lane so that people can believe down the line. I have an ambition to start an incubator with a lot of other people here in Bosnia-Herzegovina, but I think we have to take it step by step. Let's first prove it ourselves that we can do it, and then help other people do it.
Senad, I'm over here. I can relate a lot to what you're saying. In fact, the whole foundation was bootstrapped for quite a long time. And I think what's impressive is the fact that you're able to share these stories of failure and the ups and downs and the anxiety and the breakdowns and all of that, which people avoid talking about, but it's a natural part of life, especially when you're ambitious. I want to just turn the question back to something else that you do, which is also partly bootstrapping. I think the whole country is temporarily bootstrapped, if you ask me. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, because out of bad times, you create great and amazing leaders and people. So I think everyone here doesn't realize it, but the fact that we're not in a situation where we have everything available to us on a silver platter means that we have to fight harder. And the fact that you have to fight harder means that when you get into an environment where things are easier and easily available to you, you absolutely eat the competition alive. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many people from Bosnia that move to other countries start to dominate those domains, because they have that fighting spirit. But I want to touch on something that you do besides develop amazing software and products and so on. You are a great advocate for Bosnia and Herzegovina across many other domains, and you play a lot of different roles, but I think you play a big role in advocating for people moving back here and investing here and being part of this greater community and growing this community. Can you tell me what drives all of those additional initiatives, besides the fact that you have very little time given how many other things you do? What's inspiring you to be an advocate for Bosnia and Herzegovina to be the place to live, work, raise your family, and that you see a bright future in this country?
Thank you for the question, Eddie. Yeah, I mean, I have to be honest, when I moved in 2016 to Bosnia-Herzegovina, I didn't realize the state of the country, and I didn't come with a huge vision of what I was going to do. In a sense, it was a bit, selfish in that I wanted to live in Mostar, and that was that basically, and then I tried to figure out if I could create a life around that. But then when I started seeing some of the local problems that we have, and I think mass immigration perhaps being the most urgent one to take care of, I started thinking about, all right, what are things that I can do here that I can contribute to this society while I'm already here? And it's one of those things, and you know this, I think, as well, Eddie, as much as it takes time and energy, it's just as rewarding in the other direction as well. So coming here as well, yeah, of course, it takes time for me to prepare a keynote, but this also fills me with so much energy to be with our young people and some of our older generations as well that have gone through this process the first time around and the second one. What have they gone on to do in life? It's extremely rewarding to give in life. I mean, it sounds so cliche, look at him standing up there and say that, but I really feel that it is. And I don't know if it is for everybody, but for me it is. And I think it's important, and I try to make the most out of everything that I can do. And I do some things that are not necessary for me. For example, now I invested into a building in Bosnia-Herzegovina. I want to build the first co-living, co-working space for digital nomads in Herzegovina. It's not because I need it. Zendev is a much bigger company, but I want to inspire other people that are there to realize that Mostar doesn't have to just be a place where you come, you see the old bridge, you take a picture and you leave. Maybe we can offer more. So you just have to lead the way and show it. Thank you. I don't know if you need a mic.
As I am not a software developer, and I'm pretty much a black sheep here. Yeah, I'm sorry. I am a lawyer, and I don't think that anyone is pretty much interested in illegal stuff here. But I am very keen on hearing more about the tax perspective you were saying, because I think many people here are true patriots, and they would be willing to pay taxes if they get a return. And I think there is money in Bosnia and Herzegovina budgets and everything that can be used But I think the culture needs to change in people believing that they have a saying in how it is distributed.
Sure.
How you think that your Swedish experience can transfer in the tax politics in Bosnia?
Thank you for the question. And it's a big question, and obviously I'm not a politician. I'm hoping Ede will become one. Take the role for all of us. Future president, maybe. That as well, and I kind of see it as a hen and the egg problem. Like, people don't believe in the tax system, so they're avoiding to pay for it as well. But I also see that a lot of people use that as an excuse just because they don't want to pay the taxes, right? It's an easy thing to say, oh, I don't want to give it to them, they're criminals. But it's like a criminal pointing at a criminal saying you're a criminal, right? So I think we have to clean up before our own house, and then I just hope that someone along the lines will come and start making things for the better. I can see it in our own city in Mostar that it's we didn't have we have problems politically there generally, but it's gotten really, really better over the last 3 or 4 years. And I don't think people have to realize that nothing can happen overnight. And sometimes we think that, if we select the right politician, everything's going to fix itself. No, everything takes a long time. And we have a mess from the very grounds up. It's going to take a long time to untangle it, but I really believe that it can be untangled. So, yeah.
Thank you, and I must thank you for also pointing out that university and education doesn't always have to be in the front seat, but of course it is important, but you know what I mean. My question is about startups, especially like startups who are focused on the people who don't have that much financial power, like students, and who are focused to the universities or that kind of sector, who students, the people who don't have a big revenue. And my second question is about about how to recognize good accelerators and, for example, Innovation Nation programs. Give an example of that, or European Innovation Academy, how to recognize for which incubators to apply, and
Okay, sure. Thank you. As far as the first question, I think it's natural for a lot of you guys, you're students, and for that reason, a lot of the ideas you have are solving some other students' problems, right? Because you're living it. And we did this as well, like my first projects were in that as well. Abdrisak had this book that he was selling on studyhabits.com, and it was the same struggle. And he came to me with that in college. He's like, I'm an idiot. I'm selling to students. They don't have money. So it is true if you're trying to sell like that. But if you look at Avidno, we're trying to sell to like municipalities and directly to the college, right? So for example, we recently closed with our first college, Helsinki University, bought a site-wide license for Avidnote. So there are other ways that are entities that have the money, but trying to go like B2C specifically to the students, I would avoid it, quite honestly. Again, it depends on how big you want it to be. If you're thinking I want to build something that's going to create a nice quality of life for me, I think it's possible, right? You don't need a tremendous amount of money. If you want to build something bigger, then you have to think global to all the B2C students all across the world. Possible, but very tough. And then the second part, as far as incubators, I mean, my master's is in entrepreneurship and business design. As a part of the education, it was an incubator, right? It doesn't necessarily breed entrepreneurs. I saw it, I talked about it earlier. A lot of my friends got a ton of capital. After a year, they blew through that capital and they got solid jobs, right? So I don't think that the incubator is the thing that makes or breaks. It certainly wasn't the education that I received there. I came in there, and a lot of people, how can I say, they saw me as an entrepreneur when I came there because I had already created something before that. So it was already in me in some way to be that. So the incubator, they're not the ones building the company in the end. It's you and the amount of hours that you put in. I really believe that. And with the information that we have available online today, people make too big of a fuss of that. The incubator usually just gives you an office so you can sit somewhere, right? Everything else is up to you. So don't worry about which incubator you join.
Okay. Me again, here.
Where?
Here.
Here is okay.
Here, again.
It's a broad term.
Yeah, so back to university, I have a question about your education a bit. I want to ask you why Chalmers and why not KTH or Uppsala or any other university that's similar?
Sure. So no specific reason other than that I grew up in Gothenburg, and I remember when we were kids and we drove the tram by the Chalmers University, and I was in the tram with my dad, and Dad said like, this is like the top place here in Gothenburg. If you study really hard, you can get to study at this university. So I think he imprinted in my mind that if I do good in life, I get to be a part of the Chalmers University, right? Nothing more than that. It was there, it was available, it's a good university. Could have been anything else, but it ended up being Chalmers.
I won't be asking a question. I'm just going to take this opportunity to tell a little story which we had in Mostar. I was actually enrolled in the youth council in our city, and we had a mandate for about 2 years, and we've had a lot of sending emails to companies, to government institutions to tell them to can we come to you, can we talk a little bit about our problems, and we hardly ever had some responses. And actually Zendev was the first company, first governmental, it wasn't a governmental institution, but none of them came to us, that actually called us, said to us, come here, come to our company, let's sit together, gather a group of us, and said talk to us about your problems. And
thank you for highlighting that.
And I didn't have an opportunity to say thank you before this, and this is this opportunity, and I'm just taking it.
Really appreciate it, sincerely.
We still have time for questions. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask. But if that's it, yeah, more? Okay.
Hello, I have just one short question. What did you sacrifice on this path in accomplishing everything you did accomplish, and what does it take to accomplish the things you did?
That's a really, really good question. I didn't touch on that, but I did sacrifice a lot. So I think sometimes you just choose your path in life, and I ended up being very obsessive about what it is that I did, right? And I could feel it over a longer period of time, I stopped hanging out with my friends, because when they call you 1 time, 2 times, 5 times, after 5 times, if every time you say, I gotta work, the 6th time your friends don't call you anymore, right? After that, I could even feel like I wasn't visiting my family enough, which is some of the values that I really always have held dear to me, but I kind of lost myself in that entire process. So I think if you're going down this journey, you have to think about what are the values that are more important than work, and keep honest to those values as well. So if you know that some things you need to cut out, right? If you have a habit of drinking pet kaffe dnevno, now you maybe need to have 1 dnevno yellow with your friends. So it's gonna have to come from somewhere. For me, when I was 19 and went into this, I was an avid gamer when I was younger. I just loved gaming, right? But I knew that if I was gonna do this, it's just not possible. There's not enough days in the, not enough hours in the day. So I cut out gaming overnight entirely and focused on this. Figure out what are the things that you can cut out that aren't really necessarily important, but then keep the really important things, like keep going to the gym, keep working out, stay healthy, try to eat healthy, take care of your family and all of those things, right? So a lot of the times during this process, I've had kind of a bad conscience that I feel like a lot of people, I haven't given them the attention that they deserve. But at the same time, I've been very lucky that they've been very supportive of me and understood that I was on this journey, and yeah, that's that.
Okay, thank you, Senad. This was awesome. I enjoyed it so much. So now I would like to invite, let's give a round of applause again for Senad.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.